Disneyland Paris is one of 6 Disney resorts across the globe, and it's the only one in Europe. This resort opened back in 1992 with just one park named Euro Disneyland, but was later renamed Disneyland Park. This is arguably the prettiest castle park in the world, and it features a wonderful mix of coasters, dark rides, and shows. Then in 2002, the resort received its second park in Walt Disney Studios. This movie-themed park is often considered the world's worst Disney park, but it does have a few additional roller coasters and some dark rides well worth checking out. So in this video, I will rank the resort's top 25 rides and attractions. Before starting the list, I need to note that I cannot rank the nighttime show at Walt Disney Studios, Avengers Power the Night. This 10-minute show features dazzling visuals as you have projection mapping on Tower of Terror, some fireworks, and most notably, a series of drones creating logos and imagery from the films. And you also the bombastic Avengers score. We saw bits of the show while park hopping, but we didn't see the show in its entirety as we chose to prioritize seeing Disney Delight and Disney Dreams at the main park instead, simply because of how awesome those shows were. Number 25. Alice's Curious Labyrinth at Disneyland Park. This is a themed hedge maze. It's longer than you may expect, as there are a lot of twists and turns, and near the end, you can climb up a castle giving a unique bird's eye view of Fantasyland. Number 24. Cars Katra Ru at Walt Disney Studios. This is a teacup-style attraction from Zamperla. It is similar to the old-school Crazy Daisy rides, but this one has an extra turntable built in. While you cannot spin the cups manually, you can get some moderately forceful rotations like a tilt-a-whirl at points. This ride ultimately inspired Mater's Junkyard Jamboree and Alien Swirling Saucers at the US Disney parks. The latter were upgraded with swinging vehicles, which adds a new dynamic, but the spinning is better on the original Cars ride. Up next would have been the Studio Tram Tour Behind the Magic at Walt Disney Studios. A Studio Tram Tour should be a great attraction when given a Disney budget. Too bad it was not given a Disney budget. Most of the ride was spent slowly rolling past nothing. Instead of looking at sets, you watched a TV screen where actors and actresses talked about filmmaking. Not the most engaging experience. There were 2 grand set pieces though that redeemed the attraction, with the best of the bunch being Catastrophe Canyon. This was a special effects bonanza as an oil tanker lights on fire, and a flash flood rushed towards you to douse out the flames. Number 23. Cars Road Trip at Walt Disney Studios. This is a much abridged version of the Studio Tram Tour. The experience was basically cut in half, but I honestly think that's an improvement. A majority of the experience is now spent in Catastrophe Canyon, which is still the star. Then you have a few Cars-themed set pieces that were added in between. Number 22. Mickey's Philhar Magic at Disneyland Park. This is a fun 3D show featuring several popular songs from animated Disney films. The visuals are colorful, and the music is clear. But there are 3 reasons why I prefer the Magic Kingdom version. First, that one has a larger screen. Second, this one is missing the Donald animatronic at the end. Third, this film is bilingual, and the language would switch between French and English mid-song. Number 21. RC Racer at Walt Disney Studios. This is an intimate half-pipe where you rock back and forth. Honestly, it feels more like a pendulum flat ride than a traditional coaster. While the vehicles do not spin like the standard half-pipe model, you are boosted by semi-punchy launches, and you get solid and sustained floater airtime at the highest points, but you only get 2 or 3 max swings. Like the flat rides, RC Racer is an incredibly short cycle to keep up with demand. Number 20. Blanc N at Disneyland Park. This is a classic Snow White dark ride retelling the film's story. It is on the shorter side, but the sets have good-looking animatronics, and I particularly like the effect when the evil witch reveals her true form. Number 19. Peter Pan's Flight at Disneyland Park. This suspended dark ride gets infamously long queues, but it is a fun experience. I love how the start flies over a miniaturized London, then later in the ride, you pass Captain Hook as he battles Peter Pan. but like Snow White, this is another short one. Number 18, Voyage de Pinocchio at Disneyland Park. This is another dark ride, but it offers a more satisfying ride experience than the prior two. The ride feels a bit longer, and I also like the visuals because you travel through an amusement park, and then later in the ride, you have a giant monstro animatronic lunging towards you. Number 17, Mickey and the Magician at Walt Disney Studios. This is the park's most popular stage show, and it was quite good. There are some basic magic effects, but the main purpose of the show is to sing and dance to popular Disney songs. It is worth knowing the show is bilingual. Mickey Mouse speaks entirely in French, but the human cast members all speak English, so I was able to follow along without any issues. Number 16, Star Tours at Disneyland Park. This is an enjoyable motion simulator. It's a turbulent adventure past familiar Star Wars scenes, and there's a lot of re-ride value because it's random which planets you'll get. And as you'd expect from Disney, the visuals are crisp and clear. Number 15, Indiana Jones at Disneyland Park. This is a small intimate coaster, but it is well themed as you travel around a temple. This keeps the layout relatively hidden both on and off ride. The coaster has some decent airtime, both on the drops and uphill ascents. Then the vertical loop midway through the ride has very strong Gs. However, this coaster is not the most comfortable experience as you have hard restraints and the directional changes will push you sideways. You definitely want to lean forwards on this one, otherwise you can get a lot of headbanging. Number 14, It's a Small World at Disneyland Park. This classic dark ride features an infectious tune and the stylistic dolls. It's a long ride, and there's a lot to see as you travel around the world. This one does not have as many Disney characters as the California version, but sharp-eyed riders may spot one or two characters throughout. Number 13, SpiderMan Web Adventure at Walt Disney Studios. This is an interactive shooting dark ride themed to the famous superhero. Rather than giving riders guns, you use hand gestures to fire webs at 3D screens. This mechanic works seamlessly. But I do have two issues with this attraction that keep it out of the top 10. One, there are simply too many cooks in the kitchen. With everyone firing all at once, the screen is absolute chaos and it's tough to determine who's hitting what. Second, I wish the ride took advantage of Spider-Man's famous villains. Instead, you fight generic spider bots. But I can sort of see why this was done so you have a large quantity of things to fire at. Number 12, Buzz Lightyear Astro Blast at Disneyland Park. This is a shooting dark ride very similar to the versions in the US. This one thankfully has the non-mounted guns like California, and there are plenty of physical targets to fire at. Just know it's harder to get a max score on this one because the highest value targets are worth less than other versions. Number 11, Disney Stars on Parade at Disneyland Park. This is a great parade that is similar to the Festival of Fantasy in Florida. You have nice floats with all sorts of Disney characters, and the characters walking the street have a lot of flexibility to interact with the crowd. For example, the chipmunks went absolutely nutty when they saw my Chip and Dale hat. Then the exciting visuals are paired with cheerful music that simply puts you in a great mood. Number 10, Crush's Coaster at Walt Disney Studios. This is a mostly indoor spinning coaster. There is a very brief outdoor bit, but a majority of the experience takes place indoors in a giant show building. The main layout is the commonly cloned Mauer SC2000 spinning coaster identical to Laugh Track at Hershey Park or Spider at Lagoon. You have a big swooping drop at the start, then the layout is minimally braked, so you get a fairly consistent spin with the directional changes. And all of this takes place in a darkened environment with a pulse-pounding audio score and some projection effects. These accentuate the speed and disorientation. Then before the coaster bit, you have a fun dark ride sequence that varies depending if you're facing forwards or backwards. Those going forwards have blue or high waters. Those going backwards are in the dark or deep sea. Just beware this coaster is low capacity. It routinely is the worst line at the entire resort day after day. Number 9, Fantom Manor at Disneyland Park. This is a unique take on the Haunted Mansion. The backstory is tied into Big Thunder Mountain, and it's centered around a wedding that went horribly wrong. Many scenes are similar to Haunted Mansion. You have the delightfully creepy atmosphere and ghouls, just with upgraded lighting, but the finale differs by traveling through a western town with some fantastic set pieces. This ties it all together with Frontierland. Number 8. Disney Dreams and Disney Delight at Disneyland Park. I'm grouping the two nighttime spectaculars together because they occur one after another, and they're the perfect nightcap. Disney Delight has a series of drones flying above the castle. The reveal of the mouse ears is a true wow moment. Then the shooting star effect later in the show is mesmerizing to watch. Then the main fireworks show is a visual spectacle between the projection mapping on the castle and the pyrotechnics in the air. And this is of course paired with music perfectly synchronized to what you're seeing. Number 7. Lion King Rhythm of the Pride lands at Disneyland Park. This is a wonderful stage show. 3/4 of the songs are straight from the film, but a few were created specifically for this show. The vocals are spectacular. Just note the entire production is in English, not French. Then the choreography is great too, as it leans more towards the style of the Broadway production rather than the Animal Kingdom's Festival of the Lion King. Up next would have been Rock and Roller Coaster at Walt Disney Studios. This was an indoor Vekoma launch coaster themed to Aerosmith, but the premise was different than the Florida version. Rather than racing through the streets to a concert, you are instead riding the music as you whiz past these colorful spotlights. It made the experience much more disorienting. This one seemed to have less braking and more speed than the Florida version, so the later elements were more eventful. But the highlight was still the initial launch, which had a solid kick, and the first two inversions that piled on the positive Gs. Number 6. Ratatouille The Adventure at Walt Disney Studios. This is a trackless dark ride where you're meant to feel like a rat and face all of their dangers. The giant screens really convey that as you venture through the kitchen. The visuals are crisp, and there's plenty to take in. Then the transitions in between include some physical sets as a bonus. I do wish the experience was more animatronic based, but the story, visuals, and motion synchronization ultimately yields a satisfying attraction. Number 5. Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland Park. This is the best of the classic Pirates rides for a few reasons. 1. The sets are better lit. This makes it easier to appreciate the details, and there's a lot of animatronics and physical sets as you float through the town. 2nd, the sequencing is better. The scenes are in a different order, making it feel fresher. And I like how you have 2 drops, one at the start and another at the end to serve as a nice climax. Number 4. Avengers Assemble Flight Force at Walt Disney Studios. This is a re-theme of Rock and Roller Coaster, and I think it was an upgrade. The physical coaster is identical, but the visuals are different. I heard a lot of poor reviews, but I actually enjoyed the sense of speed. You have a dark room with a starfield effect like Space Mountain. Then you have these video screens with the heroes battling spaceships, and these were strategically placed during the less exciting elements to improve the pacing. And the onboard audio works for me with the Avengers score supplemented by narration. The story is fairly straightforward, but it does carry through the attraction, and you have a sweet Iron Man animatronic during the pre-show. Number 3. Big Thunder Mountain at Disneyland Park. This is a strong case as the world's best mine train coaster. Most of the ride feels similar to the other Big Thunders, as you wind around a beautiful rocky mountain, and there are some sneaky drops giving solid pops of airtime, particularly if you're in the back car. But what makes this one unique is the start and finish. Since the ride is located on an island, you have these long underground tunnels to go in between the station and main layout. The final one in particular is an incredible sense of speed, and it serves as a grand finale you don't get on the other Big Thunders. See my review for more, but this is probably the crowd favorite at this park. Number 2. Star Wars Hyperspace Mountain at Disneyland Park. This is the most intense coaster Disney has ever created, and I really like it. Unlike the other space mountains that are sit-down coasters focused on drops and turns, this is a launched looping coaster. The experience starts with an exciting uphill launch. It is very theatric because you're inside a cannon, and has surprising punch because of the incline. Then the indoor section has some very forceful elements, including some turns early in the ride and the initial sidewinder inversion. Then the theming works for me. The dark star field gives a good sense of speed. You also have some well-timed screen effects, especially on the corkscrew because you rotate around the TIE fighters. Then there's onboard audio as icing on the cake. The ride is a bit shaky, but fortunately, it was retrofit with Vekoma's vest restraints in recent years to eliminate headbanging. See my review for more, but this is a must for thrill seekers. And coming in, number 1 is Twilight Zone Tower of Terror at Walt Disney Studios. This is the best attraction at the entire Disneyland Paris resort. The haunted themed drop tower was recently refreshed to become even creepier. The little girl from the pre-show now haunts the ride experience. The way she moves and talks is absolutely chilling, and the ride experience was improved as well. You get to the drop sequence faster, and you have more drops than before. The seatbelts allow for wonderful floater airtime in the quick ascents, and then the descents as well. Then the sudden drops are paired with a great stomach drop sensation. So those are the top 25 rides and attractions at the Disneyland Paris resort. What are your favorite attractions here? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this countdown, I would appreciate it if you gave this video a like, and you considered subscribing, because there'll be a lot more roller coaster and amusement park videos here at Canopy Coaster. Thanks for watching.